Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality.
Hi. That was a long bit I wrote about myself. Typical Leo. Yeah. Yeah, I left it behind about, I think about 10 years ago now, but it changed, you know. I feel for me it really changed. Or maybe it's just I got older because you know, back in, I'm familiar with the bodybuilding of the 80s and 90s, really, you know, more so even the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s. And it changed a lot. And you know, I mean, today's crop, they're always posting their breakfast, their lunch, their dinner, and their lat pull downs. You don't really need to see that every day. Yeah, 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 exactly. And it's in your life for a time, and it serves its purpose, and then you move on. You know, that's the way I like to look at it. You know, every phase of my life, really, it was there for a time and a purpose, and then I moved on. It's going well. I just had somebody text me that they can only hear me. I know. I looked at it. That's okay. I tried to do my own chat show and I gave up after the first time because I couldn't hear them. They couldn't hear me. And I thought, this is so embarrassing because we were live the whole time. So I never got the courage to do it again. I know when it finally starts. I can hear you, yeah. Can everybody else? I can hear you here, but like I said, I don't know if anybody else can hear us.
Very strange.
No, I'm hearing you on the computer.
Can you just
Check. There we go. Okay.
Now I'm hearing. Now I'm
Okay.
hearing.
Now
you.
you.
Okay. You got it?
Okay. All right. So we're doing this.
For
Oh,
those of
you-
you,
I think
Yeah,
we're
we
good.
should probably.
zoom up.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah,
what we had. We
yeah.
started
I
late
got the
because,
heads up too. Yeah.
yeah, because that's why we had to start late because he wasn't hearing us, we were hearing him, and it was there was all this mumbo mess. Yeah.
I'm actually hearing you on the
Anyway.
computer now, so that's good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So maybe we could shut off.
Yeah, I think I can take the Bluetooth off there.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna hang up.
We're gonna hang up the phone and
Okay.
hopefully.
Let's hope it's
Okay.
There we are. There we go. We're here. Good.
Okay.
finally.
All right, guys. Welcome to Transition Radio. Real Talk of the Cummings and our wonderful guest today, Lee Penman, and guest that didn't even hear any of the actual bio. So we might just want to kind of like give him a little bit of that bio. He's a music journalist from Scotland, and he contributed to a range of music magazine and newspapers. Lee has his own music column, or had his own music column in the local newspaper. His first transition was from music journalism to bodybuilding and fitness writing around 1988. And he states,
During his time in the field, he was contributing editor to both national and international bodybuilding magazines. He remained in this field for over 30 years, during which time he worked with Dave Palumbo and John Romano on the creation of RX Muscle, for which he became a staff writer editor until 2010. And on his departure, and ever since, he's worked with former bodybuilder Colette Nelson in the medical profession as a writer and assistant.
he's done many media and TV projects, and current endeavor is his autobiography, Misfit, which focuses on his life, career, and of course, that other major transition, which was going from female to male officially in 2011. Now that we got that out of the way for the second round, I'm telling you.
A life well lived.
So, Lee, tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up? I know you're from Scotland. Did you grow up in Scotland, or
Yes.
did just?
Yeah. I actually right behind me is a picture of the beach from where we grew up, not in the beach, but near that beach. I grew up in a tiny fishing village in Scotland called Hopeman. It's on the Murrayshire coast. I think the easiest way I can say for people not familiar too much with Scotland is most people know Aberdeen and Edinburgh. So it's like about 400 miles north of Edinburgh, 60 miles northeast of Aberdeen. So that's kind of like a gauge for you. So I grew up there, and I kind of the funny story is that when I was being christened, right, I didn't remember it myself, but I was told this. My mother told me that the minister christened me Kieran instead of Karen, which was my name at the time, was Karen. Now Kieran is the male version of Karen. So it was like ironic that even the minister knew there was something wrong.
Oh, wow.
He kind of
fast forward to like 4 years. I think I was about 4 years old, maybe 5 years old, when an aunt of mine lived next door, and I went to her, and I caught something on the evening news that night, and I asked her. Remember, this was like 1967. I asked her, "Where do you go to get sex change operations?" So yeah, I knew from an early age, you can say, that something wasn't quite right with myself.
You know, it's the times we're living right now. I feel like we're going backwards with all the accomplishment that we've made. And I think because people are confusing gender nonconforming or gender queer with transsexuals, right? And they think, well, why do you have to do anything to your body? Why can't you just express and just be who you are without changing yourself? And I don't think they understand. If somebody were to ask you, Lee, what is the difference between you and a gender not conforming female? What would you answer? What would be your response to that person?
I would have to ask you exactly what you mean by a gender not conforming female, like just like
a gender.
Oh yeah, like a female that didn't recognize herself as female, but didn't recognize herself as male either. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I would say the difference would be maybe that I would assume that the gender not conforming female was with our first thought wasn't I'm male, you know, just that I'm not what I don't feel right, you know what I mean, but not necessarily want to jump forward and say I'm male. Whereas someone like who is transgender, which I don't need to tell you guys, but someone who is transgender, it's like it really is. It's kind of like the Tom Hanks movie where he sees himself in a different body in the mirror, and he looks and says, "This body doesn't match this mind." You know, that's how I always like to say it. It's like if you look in the mirror, like if a regular CIS woman, for instance, looked in the mirror and saw a guy, and she would go, this isn't me, you know. So it's the same thing for like a transgender person, I think. Anyway, you look in the mirror, and before the transition, the reflection you see, it doesn't reflect who you are inside. It's like you're looking at an imposter almost, you know. This person I'm looking at in the mirror isn't me, you know. It's very hard to try and tell somebody who's comfortable in their gender what being trans is, especially these days when we went through a phase. I hope we're getting out of it now, that we went through a phase when it was almost trendy to be trans. And you had people like Miley Cyrus, I'm androgynous, I can be this one day and that the next day. And then you got like, when you're in your teenage years, those are your years where you're really not quite sure of yourself. And so there you have all this influx of information, and it's almost like it becomes, like I say, there was a time when dare I say, it became trendy. And it was, people were calling themselves trans, and just because they were experimenting. For people that are truly trans, it's not an experiment. You know what I mean? I'm sure all of us would like to have just been born the way we are now, that born, completely in the gender we felt we were mentally. So it's not something we choose any more than someone chooses to be gay or straight.
And I think there's been a lot of confusion with all these different letters added to the LGBT alphabet. And, people have a right to express however they want. But I think people have latched onto that, and then they kind of like disregard us It's like, oh, you don't
Yeah.
need to do all that. And instead of helping us, they're like, it's damaging to the fact that, now there's just this massive move, this like really horrific move on trying to discredit us and trying to say that, they're wanting to remove all the services and all the things that we've accomplished. And it's taken us a lot of years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be. I mean, also in the gay community, there was a long time, and I'm not sure if it's any different now, but I mean, especially in the lesbian community, they did not like trans men. It was almost like trans men were a betrayal. And then you have people that, because many trans people, this is a thing that people find hard to get their head around, and I've encountered many times with people when they've asked questions is, many trans people choose to be in a relationship with the sex of person they would have been in a relationship with had they stayed the same. If you know what I'm saying. So in other words, just for anybody, I'm sure everybody watching knows what I'm saying, but if you're a female and you feel you're male and then you end up married, for example, to a female, then people say, why did you go through all that? You're with the person you would have been with anyway. But they don't get it. It's not about a choice of partner. It's about what you are in here. That's the thing. It's people don't understand that, and that's when I think people fall into the thing of saying, well, wouldn't it have been easier just to stay the way you were? No, absolutely not. Because they don't get it. It's in your mind. It doesn't matter who you're attracted to sexually. It's got nothing to do with that.
Exactly.
That's taking it in a slightly different direction, I guess, to your question. But I think it's like valid because there are so many people that really don't get that.
They don't.
I'm sure
they
you see
don't.
that yourself. So you know what I mean? They don't say, well, why didn't you just stay the way you are? Because you're together anyway. But how dysfunctional would you have been? Yeah, how dysfunctional a relationship would it have been if both of you were like, play acting in a role? You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah, they don't get it. They don't get it how deep it actually is. This goes deep into the soul level, into the essence. It's beyond feeling. And we can only explain it as a feeling because feelings are connected to the neural pathway that fires the brain to the body and all the things that go on with being a human. But they think it's so easy to explain something like this phenomenon that we are, but they can't explain it. And so they try to politicize it. I mean, what do you think about all this politicalization that has taken place with the trans narrative?
Oh, there was a really bad upturn a couple of years ago, I think it was, when even people I knew were talking about the whole bathroom thing. And oh no, there's a trans woman in the bathroom, or there's a trans. It wasn't even. It was more directed towards trans women. It was like, why is this trans woman in a woman's bathroom? Thinking she was going to be some kind of pervert, and that their children were in danger. And I've actually had people that I know ask me about that. I'm thinking it's preposterous. You know what I mean? So now all of a sudden, all trans people are sexual predators. Because that's the way that there were this whole bathroom thing. Why is it even a debate? Why is it even a debate who uses it? That's the one thing I still find uncomfortable about being trans is people don't understand. It's like when you go out, and it's like the bathroom thing. It's not so bad from the male to female trans thing because it's all stalls, so there isn't really a thing. In the female to male, you're waiting in line for a series of urinals. And it's like sometimes you just don't go because it's like, how many people are you going to have to let go before you so that you can use a stall? You know what I mean? It's still not. And at the end of the day, how many guys have urinals at home? None of them. So why are they everywhere where you go out? It's not like, oh, we put them in here to make you feel comfortable. You know what I mean? Because this is what you use in your bathroom at home. That I've never understood that. I've never understood
that. What's the mentality of like having two guys like you to have to go to women's bathroom? I mean, would that not make a societal, problem. You know,
Yeah.
because people are not going to perceive you as women at all.
No,
So it's just
it's
going to
like
make the women uncomfortable.
Yeah,
you're going to designate restrooms according to your genitals. You know what I
I
mean?
know.
Yeah.
I know. And it's just a place to relieve yourself. You know, they make such big deals about little things. And they
Yeah,
always feel like they're not safe. You know, it's like, oh, the big bad trans person is going to come and do something horrible to you. I mean,
yeah,
that's just preposterous, like you said.
Where like
yeah.
many trans
No,
women are afraid of, you know, especially if they're starting their transition to even use the women's restroom because they are still very much, you know, scared of what those ramifications are going to be. You know,
yeah,
am I possible enough? Am I going to make someone uncomfortable? Am I going to cause, you know, some little girl to get all bothered or something? I mean, so they're more
yeah,
afraid than the people, you know, that are
yeah.
saying.
They don't realize that. Yeah.
I
So, Lee,
remember when I used to, you know, before I transitioned, when I was just starting transitioning, and I would go to the gym. I always remember I used to hate using the women's locker rooms. I just used to absolutely hate it. I couldn't wait till the moment I walked from the locker room to the main gym floor and nobody would see what locker room I came out of, you know, because I wasn't as far advanced that I could be accepted into the male locker room without getting looks because everybody knew me. So you can imagine, it's like everybody knows me here now. All of a sudden, you know what I mean? Or you know, I'd be thinking that women, if I was in the women's locker room, would be looking at me thinking I don't belong in there. What are you doing in here? And then the men, if I went into the men's room, would be going, "Oh my God, you went into the wrong one." You know what I mean?
Yeah, the same.
I have a similar situation. I was working on a Gold's Gym, and it was in like I was starting my transition, but I still kind, you know, didn't really look fully male yet, but kind of did. And I remember when it was time for me to go from the other bathroom, the female to the male, a lady goes, "Young man, you're in the wrong bathroom," and I'm like, "Oh, I guess it's time to use the other bathroom now."
Yeah, I mean,
So
it
yeah,
is ridiculous when you think about it, and it still is a thing now when you're, you know, when you're going out. I'm always relieved to hear, like, maybe the wrong word to use, no pun intended, but relieved to see that it's a gender neutral restroom. You
yeah,
know, so they have several of them. They're gender neutral. There's no problem. You know,
exactly,
I
exactly.
mean,
I prefer to use those too, but
We
when
definitely prefer that. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
it makes us more comfortable. It's like there's nothing that I am out to prove to anyone. You
yeah.
know, it's not a validation of my femininity or whatever. It's just I need to go to the bathroom. That's it.
very
But now
simple.
you've got the problem of now you know what it's like to wait on a long line to the women's room, where the men
Yeah,
just walk straight in.
Yeah,
you do.
exactly. The thing I hate, and I don't know about you, is like the stalls. Men only go in there when they have to do a number two.
And
So you're always going to
Yeah, of
get
course.
they're filthy.
filthy, smelly toilets. It's like, didn't your mother teach you anything?
That's a definite
Yeah,
upgrade for
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's one of the last things that still niggle me about it. Everything else is fine, you know. But
yeah,
there's that one area that's like you can't, you know what I mean? You can't get away with it. You know, 'cause,
yeah. I know,
you know,
I know.
or in my gym, for example, there's only one stall
Wow,
in the gym in the men's locker room. There's only one. So if
wow.
somebody's in there, I don't know what they're in there. They're like, I don't know if they're putting up curtains. I don't know if they're putting down a
They take
carpet.
forever, don't
You
they?
know, hooking up their Wi-Fi in there, and I don't know what they're doing, but it's just like, oh my God, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? How many times do I have to sigh and stomp backwards and forwards to get the idea that somebody's waiting?
yeah.
yeah.
Have some manners. So, Lee, tell us a
Exactly.
little bit about your initial, like when you started transitioning. How was that like? You said it was 2011.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's right.
yeah. How did it go? How did
It
you
was
like end
actually
up?
it was actually very, very easy for me. Like, I will credit my friend with that that you mentioned earlier, Colette Nelson, because I tried to transition when I was 28. I started transitioning when I was 28. I went to see actually a very prominent physician in Charing Cross in London, at the time. Dr. Russell, I think it was Russell or Robert Reed. He was very well known for his work in the transgender community at the time. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there was a Bond model called Tula and Helen Cossey. Yeah.
Yeah.
She actually went to him. She was one of the his patients. And so I remember I went in there, I was evaluated, and he said, there was no doubt in his mind that I had gender dysphoria. He gave me a prescription for Sustanon, which, the triple testosterone. And then they sent me off back to Scotland with and then of course I had to hand it over at my local pharmacy. Who probably wondered why on earth am I giving you testosterone and needles, But I started the transition, but my voice was the first thing to go. And I felt like, once again, I'm in a small fishing village in Scotland. So I kind of like, at that time I said, oh, it's because, I go to all these concerts because I was still in the music business just at that time. And I said, I'm shouting about all this music and it's just damaging my vocal cords. I tried to get away with it like that. But then I realized, it's small town gossip. I mean, I'm sure it's the same in the Midwest as it is in Scotland. It's like everybody knows everybody's business. And, even then we're talking about in the early 80s, even then, nobody was talking about transgender people then, nobody really knew what transgender was. They'd only just managed to figure out what gay was, it was like one step at a time. Now you're throwing trans at me. Wait, So I decided to quit. And then when I moved to New York, I took me a little bit, but one of the occasions, I still remember it like it's a movie playing in my head. I was walking just past Penn Station with Colette, and I'm thinking to myself in my head, I was thinking, am I going to tell her that I was once halfway transitioning, Because I was trying to explain my deep voice to a woman who's used to female bodybuilders with voices much deeper than mine. I was self-conscious, and when I told her that, she was saying, I have friends with voices deeper than yours. It's just like, but at the time I was very conscious of it, and so I said, well, the reason my voice is a bit deeper is because I started transitioning years ago. Like at that point, it was about 10 years, because maybe I was about 37, 38 at that time. And I said that, I'd started transitioning in my 20s, but I just didn't do it. And all she said, I was worried about how she would react. And all she said to me was, Lee, it's New York City. Nobody cares. Wow.
That's very true.
Armed with nobody cares. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll do it then. So most of my female life, I spent correcting people, because even, like I said, with the first bit with the minister, all through my life, people would call me sir. Even when I was doing my best, like putting the makeup on, it was horrendous. I'm telling you now, it was horrendous. But I tried to be female. I really did have a really good shot at it. I had the blonde curly hair, and I had the blue eyeshadow. I look like a roller disco queen, And I really tried, but they would still say sir, and so then I had to go from doing that to correcting, to not correcting them anymore, which was a relief, because I thought, oh my God, are they going to call me ma'am now that and I'm going to have to correct them again? But no, and it was honestly the most natural thing for me. I'm touched when people say how courageous, because I mean, I think you probably get it, everybody says, oh my God, that must have taken a lot of courage to do that. But I did watch a snippet, well, I watched the whole thing of one of your prior shows this morning. And I think you made reference to the fact that it took more courage to live the way you were living before you transitioned than it did. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was what you were saying. And I totally got that. It took more courage to try and figure out how to live knowing that you felt male in a female body than it did to finally just like morph into who you always were meant to be, whether it was male or female in your, whichever, way you were going. And to me, it took no courage. It was a relief. You know, I was finally able to not worry about any hairs that might have been growing into my face that I'd been trying to tweeze out for 10 years, you know?
Exactly. It was
Any
just like,
shadow that I'd still gained from when I was 28 on sustanon, you know?
yeah, it was so easy. Like once I transitioned, it was like a sigh of relief because all
Yeah.
through, and I'm sure you felt the same way all through life. You felt like you had to like pretend to be this female, trying to play this, learn how to walk. I
Oh
mean,
my
from the
God.
moment
Yeah.
I got out of the moment I got out of my mother's womb, I was always made fun of the way I walked, the way I talked, everything was like, can I do anything right? Because it's like, how do you do female? I don't know how to do female. I mean, even when I
Yeah.
detransitioned, I couldn't do female when I detransitioned. I couldn't do female when I was born. And so this
Yeah.
is what, feels right. But everybody's always trying to probe and hope and make you be a certain way.
Yeah. They're thinking, oh, you must have really sat down and considered this big step, you know? And also people wonder why are you doing it? Because for me, I was 49, 49, 50 when I did it. When I fully transitioned, and well, when I say fully transitioned, it was just like, the weird thing is I don't even recognize it as a transition because I didn't really change anything about myself. And I don't know if you feel the same. I didn't suddenly dress differently. I didn't suddenly walk differently. I didn't suddenly sit differently. I didn't suddenly talk differently. It was still me in every single way, apart from the fact that I was suddenly able to access like a real men's wardrobe, instead of dressing androgynously, because you can get
Exactly.
away with that, but I was finally able to. I mean, it was a great thing for me to buy men's shoes, for example, even though they had to be a small size. But it was just a bit like, oh my God, my first pair, you know what I mean? My first tie, you know what I mean? And now I'm wearing shirts, you know what I mean? It was just like it was like a kid in a candy place, Suddenly I had all these things that I'd always wanted to do, and I could now do it. So no, courage had nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
Not for
you
me
just want to
anyway.
be authentic and real to yourself. You want to be
Yeah,
truthful to this
it's far
to the
harder being
essence of who you are.
inauthentic than it is being authentic.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
Trying to
why.
play the role,
That's what.
I mean, I got
Yeah.
married. I was married as well. I even tried to get married because I figured that I just tried to be whatever they expected me to be from a small fishing village in Scotland within my abilities, I mean, the trajectory for somebody from my village was to leave school, work in a supermarket, meet a fisherman, marry a fisherman, have 2.4 kids, and stay at the same place for the rest of your life. And then I went through a phase when I was I would say 12 years old when I was anorexic. I was actually anorexic for probably about 30 years, if I'm honest, because for me it was never about my weight. It was about
Mm,
I found the way of stopping my body developing, and it took me a
wow.
little bit to realize that. But I thought because when you suddenly, I mean, I think we can all be trans until puberty hits. And I think
Hmm.
that's where the problems start with most trans people. Because, you can fake being whatever gender, you can be whatever gender you want until your body starts developing. And for a
Yeah.
woman, that means breasts and it means periods.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the periods. You remember when mine started? It's like it's really interesting information, but never mind. It
So
was
go
actually
ahead. Go ahead.
the only reason I remember was because it was Good Friday.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
remember saying, "What's good about it?" Nothing. But for me, the anorexia was like I found when I stopped eating with so much, then the period stopped. Because that's not your body is not gonna, childbearing is not your body's priority when you're starving yourself to death. So that was
Exactly.
the first thing that stopped. And of course, so did the development. So for me, it took me a little bit to realize that, but it was never about, because I've never been fat in my life. I can't gain weight to save my life. I really can't. It's really annoying, but I just can't. And it's easier for me to lose weight than gain weight. And so all these years I wasted in some ways being anorexic, but it was never about my weight. It was when I gained weight, I would gain it on the chest. When I gained weight, my periods would come back. So I was constantly in battle starving myself because I didn't want to. I mean, that's like a psychiatrist's dream right there.
Right.
Trying to find what's going on in that head, because I just didn't want to. I didn't want to be female, and starving myself was denying. Yeah, I'm sure you could go into a deeply spiritual thing about that, because starving myself was my way of not allowing the female to have a voice or a place in the world.
It's
I
interesting you
was,
say that. It's very interesting because I was also bulimic and anorexic, and I've known many trans guys that have had eating disorders because of the same thing. It's like you don't want your body, so you're doing everything you can to halt it or hide it. And that's
yeah,
why, this whole, I know that puberty blockers is a big to do right now. And there's a lot of people that talk a lot of negative about it. And yes, like any medication, it has side effects, but at the same time, it's also very life saving because
yeah.
it really prevents you from developing what you don't want to develop.
Even if it's just taken for the period of time where you are questioning, because we do have to understand that some people are just going to reach a questioning stage, just like some people might think they're homosexual at 13 years old and they grow up, you know what I mean? I'm not going to say normal because there's nothing abnormal about homosexuality, but they grow
Exactly.
up just to have a I'm saying it again, but they grow up just to have a regular relationship,
Right.
but they thought they were gay at 13. So, but even if you just pause things at 13, say, for example, when you're developing, just so you have time to, just to either embrace who you are or realize that you're definitely, because 30, at that age, that's where there's so many transgender suicides. Because
Exactly.
there's a lot of teenagers, they can't handle it. I mean, I've had various issues like that throughout my life too. With I think that's something that people don't talk about because they don't want to admit it. But I'm open to admit that I've had suicidal tendencies my entire life. And they haven't really gone away because of transitioning, but they'll happen sometimes for me when I'm faced with a situation where I feel like, yeah, the outside world sees this, but the outside world doesn't see everything that I have to deal with to be this. And and I know this is sounding really morbid, but I'm trying not to be morbid.
It's
I'm just
okay.
trying to be real because the outside world doesn't really know what we go through. Because even we can do whatever we want, but we'll never be 100% what we want to be.
Right.
And I think, and it's great and everything that we can go as far as we can, but there's always that thing. We're never going to have had the life experience we would have had we been born in the correct gender. And certain people are never going to see us the way we want them to see us because they know we're transgender.
Right.
I mean, it's a fact, and I think maybe that's what, I think more people have a problem with that. I feel that than are free to admit it, because
Exactly.
we all like to put on the face and pretend, oh, everything's great. You know what I mean? But there is more to it than just the appearance. There's the mental side of being transgender too, and that doesn't always go away.
Yeah, and I think that our journey allows us to reckon with the things that we need to come face to face with. And there's a really wonderful quote that I've heard from this gentleman that we've been listening to on YouTube. His name is Peter Crone, and he said, things happen the way they happen because they couldn't have happened any other way because
They didn't.
they just didn't.
Right.
You had to go through it. And I don't know what you believe in, the concept of, contractual obligations that we try to, that we agree to before incarnating on this planet. But, we may just have done this to allow ourselves to be challenged, to grow, to develop as a person, as a spirit, and that these are ramifications that are even greater than what society would think of us.
Yeah,
This is a bigger deal. You know.
yeah, yeah. And also, we got the benefit of also having lived as both male and female. So who
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
better?
for sure.
We have a perspective from both genders' point. You know what I mean? It's like few people they can say, "Oh yeah, I understand," but they don't because they've never been in that that gender. They've not been socialized as that gender, so they don't really understand. Because most people that are trans, they have an experience of life as the other person, so they know what it's like to be a woman or what it's like to be a man, you know. And that's a unique perspective then that you have on life because you've lived it as both, you know.
Yeah. Touching base on what you said regarding feeling depressed because we can't fully embody who we want to be. And I believe that that's one of the reasons a lot of people may be transitioned. I know that's partly one of the reasons why I did, because it's like, you know, hearing all the time you're an imposter, you'll never be a man, you know, it gets to you. You try to push all those thoughts aside, but it really does hurt you in a sense. So you're battling yourself. One of the things that I've learned throughout this battle and the many years, I mean, I transitioned back in 2003. He transitioned in 2015, went back and forth, battled with my spirit, my soul. One of the things that I've learned is that I am grateful for who I am. Like you said, we've walked both sides. Not too many people are able to do that. And back in ancient time, we were seen as teachers, healers, God, someone very powerful in the community.
Yeah. I've heard there are certain tribes that revere trans people as having two spirits and to be superior than everybody else. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think they fear us. I think a lot of people fear us. They fear what's
they
happening.
Fear what they don't understand.
Exactly. And I think we're seeing a massive evolutionary change. Something's happening to our species. I don't understand it fully. I can't tell people this is exactly what's happening, but something's happening where we're all like really focusing a lot on this gender confusion, this gender exchange, this energy flow that's happening in our planet.
Yeah.
You know,
and
it's bigger than
you're
we
always
care.
going to come across people that are opposed to it, you know, and you also know when people are silently opposed to it, you know. It's like, you know, when people don't quite get what you've been doing, but they're not going to say anything out loud. You know what I mean? There are those people too, you know, because they, you know, I used to encounter them in the gym, you know. They would look at you strange, like, you know, but usually they come round to your way of thinking because they realize, you know. And then I've had other people who downright don't believe me that I'm transgender. There's no way that's possible. You know, you're always a man. It's just that I'm not going to listen to you. You know? So I take that as a compliment.
I think it's amazing that. I think it's amazing that it's inextricably linked to a generational type of person that would actually, you know, like we have people that were born in the 50s who didn't deal with these trans identities or anything. And, you know, generationally, Gen X, like 4.2 of the population of Gen Xers will have transitioned. Gen Y, I guess, or Gen Z is like up to 20% now. Millennials were like, you know, like 15, 10%. And the latest generation, Generation Alpha, is on a trajectory to have 40% of their generation who will identify as LGBTQ. So there's something happening on like a cosmic, like evolutionary level, you know, that people, you know, they're going to kick and scream about it, but things are changing on this planet.
Oh yeah, there's definitely more acceptance. I always thought it would be ideal if people didn't just judge people by their gender flat out, you know, no matter what. I mean, why are we all judged by what gender we are, you know? Why are we supposed to live a certain way because we're male or another way because we're female? Or why are we only allowed to date a certain sex if we're male and a certain sex if we're female? Why are there all these rules? You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like, how restricting are they on just what happened to feelings? You know, what happened to how you feel inside? You know, it's totally disregarded because you're given like this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what's expected of you as a human being. You know what I mean? It's a bit like you start a job or something as a human being, and you're told, well, you're a male human being, so you have to dress this way, talk this way. You have to have a preference for soccer. You know what I mean? You know, and manly sports. You know, or you're a female, you got to play with dolls. You got to, you know what I mean? Wear dresses. it's just ridiculous. Yeah, how and I mean, I think finally they've got rid of the pink and blue thing, or they're at least
Yeah.
phasing it out a little bit. But you know, the whole, you know, if it's a boy, it's, you know, I mean, blue. If it's a girl, it's pink. I mean,
Yeah. And then they wonder, why such gender revolt, because it's
yeah,
been for the longest time, males do this, females do that, where people are going, forget it. We're not following that anymore. We're
yeah,
not going to, be that way. And then you look at a lot of the gender critical individuals, they make fun of the word feelings. When we say we
yeah,
feel a certain way, they're like, feels, and they
yeah,
try to make fun of all that. It's like, do you even understand the concept of feeling? Do
yeah,
you not understand how deeply rooted a feeling is?
yeah,
It,
yeah,
They'll talk about it being subjective and not, verifiable biologically and all that. And we need to understand that there are so many things that are subjective that
yeah,
still have a valid purpose and a meaning for existing.
okay,
yeah,
so we have Lyra says not all males have masculine brains, but are all expected to act masculine. Now,
But
yeah,
and vice versa. And that's very stereotypical because, society has ran on stereotypes for the longest time. Some of them we understand why, animals, and we're part of the animal kingdom, have a certain way of acting. But at the same time, we are now evolving more spiritually. And so we're
yeah,
kind of leaving our animal nature a bit behind, and we're understanding that biology isn't everything. There's a
no,
lot more to us than just the biology. And people are going to go kicking and screaming. The dinosaurs that I call, people that are still in the old way, they're going to go kicking and screaming and not realizing that the old guard is gone.
yeah,
Like the queen died. So, it's like the old has died. We're bringing in a new spiritual way of being.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's hard. Like I said, when we're talking about the beginning, it's just that you when they explain to people when you've never felt, that like you've never felt like you were female, or you've never felt like you were male. It's people don't. And it's funny because when I can be great for meeting people from your past sometimes, and it can be a useful tool like that. And a couple of years ago, I managed to find people I went to school with on Facebook. And I was like, because I knew they would not know me as, what they were presented with visually, So I would manage to trace a couple of them, and I messaged them. And actually, first of all, I had what prompted it all was somebody on a post from my old village, Hopeman in Scotland. Um, I commented on one of the posts like, "Oh yeah, I remember so and so, whatever," and then the reply to me was, "Oh yeah, have you ever seen Karen? By the way, I wonder what happened to her." And I'm like, my response to him was, "Well, maybe you should sit down because you're talking to her now." In a different incarnation. And that started the whole thing off because, once again, small village.
Yeah.
So then somebody else heard and they messaged me on Facebook. And I always remember there's one girl I went to school with, Kathleen. When I was talking to her, she was totally unfazed by it, and she said, "No, it doesn't surprise me." She says, "I remember when we were kids, we used to go round to your place to play, and there was not a doll in sight." It was all action man, Batman, cars. It's not a doll to be seen. So she said, "No, it doesn't surprise me." So it wasn't the surprise to a lot of people that had known me, because I was never. That's why I called my autobiography that I'm working on Misfit, because I never fitted in, and I'm sure you get that, because you
Oh,
don't fit
definitely.
in, especially the school days. I mean, school days were horrendous. I mean,
And that's, yeah.
you didn't fit in. You couldn't, you couldn't talk. For me, I couldn't talk to the girls because they were all talking about makeup and boyfriends and everything, or the latest fashion or something, or and I had no interest in any of that. And the boys were all talking about maybe sports or football or girls or something, and I couldn't even join in with them about that. So it was like I felt like a total misfit. So I'm sure that that didn't escape the attention, because so I tended to be a lone wolf from a very early age. You know, when
I,
everybody else was going out and partying or anything, I was sitting on that beach back there,
I
staring
think a
at
lot of us.
the sunset.
I think a lot of us in the trans community that identify as trans, we have that same kind of memory of being loners, of not really fitting in. I used to call myself an alien. I must be from Mars because I don't relate to anyone. And it's not
No.
about having a masculine or feminine brain or anything of that nature. It's just this feeling. It's you can't really put your finger on it.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like we're from another planet.
Yeah, it's like that, the old Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that nobody really understood him. He was different, had the red, shiny nose, and, these people, like, they didn't want to play any games with him, and, that whole thing. But the reality was that he was different for a reason.
Yeah.
He was different because he was helping,
Light the way.
light the way when there was no way to get to what needed to be done. So, I mean, it's the island of misfit toys, when they talk about that too, where people that don't fit in, and I feel like that's the common denominator with trans people worldwide, is that we don't feel like we fit into our societal expectations of what we should be as people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. No, it's like, because you're constantly being judged, and that's why, I mean, as much as I think we talked about this, Mark, like years ago when we were collaborating. I think we got to know one another through the Facebook thread or something about the trans bodybuilding competition, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then from that minute on, it was pretty clear that and then you didn't have the, we were both on the same page as regards that. Let's put it like that. And it's just like sometimes you see that I don't know. I tend to set myself apart sometimes from the community. I don't want to be considered part of the community, and I know that ruffles feathers, because it's just not who I am. I'd just rather blend in. And I don't know does that make me some kind of pariah in the community or not, but it's just the way you call me delusional if you want, but I just want to fit in and be seen as a regular guy. For me personally, I don't need to be seen as a trans man. I mean, and it's nothing against, obviously, it's just that I don't know why. That's my own psychology. That's my own issues there. You know what I mean? But it's just like, I don't know. It's just that maybe it was the part of the community that I got to know through Facebook and that said event that made me distance myself more,
Yeah. And I had a lot of issues too.
That was going on at that time. I was like, this is not who I am,
Yeah.
I'm not so insecure that I have to sit about and bicker about whose biceps are bigger. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's one of the things also that kind of pushed me away from the community, because here I was back in 2006 where I did all the TV circuits, the documentaries, to try to help people understand who we were. Because when I came out in 2003, there was hardly no information.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, we need to educate people. We need to help people understand how many guys like us are out there that didn't know that they could transition and change. So that's one of the reasons I got into the advocacy work. But then it started biting me in the where, and people started being rude, and I just didn't understand all the bickering and all the depression and anxiety and problems and things. And it's like, I wish I would have been born genetically a guy, but this is what I got.
Yeah, and this is the hand you've been dealt. Yeah. And you got to make the most of it. That's why I can't handle the endless whining. It's like, it's like, oh, look at me, poor me, and everything like this. No, I mean, you're victimizing yourself.
Exactly.
You're not a victim here. You're living. But like you were saying before, we're so much further forward than our predecessors. Who had to live closeted. Who didn't get to live. The most they could do was maybe put on a suit on a Sunday or something and merge into the crowd. But they couldn't live the life they wanted. Yeah, we've got the unique opportunity to live the life we wanted, and then it's like then there's a sector that's always wanted to complain. But I guess that's true of society in general, you know?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always going to be people who are happier complaining than they are making the best of what they have, you know? And we really do have it pretty good now. You know, I mean, we are to a large degree accepted. There's still the political, you know, stuff that that are, you know, there's always something they're trying to put us down or anything like that. But you know, that's just because they don't understand or they're intimidated by us. It's
Yeah.
they fear what they don't understand. People always ridicule things that they don't understand, you know, rather than admit they don't understand something. God forbid they have a missing brain cell and they don't understand.
Or they don't want to understand because
No,
they want things to be a certain way, whether it's the real conservative crowd or the religious crowd. You know, they
yeah,
want to paint us as some sort of demonic abomination, you know, that we're Satan and, you know, we're going to go to hell and all these different things. And it's like they don't understand the true spiritual aspect of who we
yeah,
are.
yeah. Yeah, and going back to your other question, for me, the becoming who I am now was so much easier than living the life I was living before. I it amazes me actually how much further, forward. But then again, sorry, I'm backtracking myself now. But then again, I think that you made reference to before is that in order to become who we are now, we really had to be who we were then, you know, because even for myself, for example, moving to New York City, uh, I tried over and over again to move to New York. First time, it was almost like I was born in the wrong body. I was born in the wrong country too. Because the first time I came into New York, I'll always remember the plane was flying in, the lights were on in the city, and I looked down and I thought, this is home. This is where I'm meant to be. This is where I need to live, you know? So then I made it my mission to do that, you know, and I just would not give up. I just kept coming back. You know, I would stay here for 3 months, go back for a month, come back again. You know, I just kept coming back until until I'd arrived here. But when I did get here, the job, one of the first real jobs I had was in a store on Christopher Street, and I help out there twice a week now to this day. It's still there. It's been going for 31 years, this store. But at the time, it was owned by two lesbians, and they never hired men. So that was just the kind of thing that they did hire guys before, and it didn't work out well. So at that point in time, these two women always hired females. So I would never have got that job because if I transitioned before I came to New York, I would never have got that job. And then I transitioned. Funnily enough, in my last year in that job, my last few months actually in that job, because I felt it was necessary. Then not only did I have something to move on to, but I felt that's one phase of my life over now. I really didn't want to be faced with all the customers coming in and going, what happened? I mean, it's funny now. I do encounter a few of the old customers every now and again. There was one particularly funny one. She came in and she walked by me. She said hi, and I went, "Oh hi," you know what I mean? Like I recognized her, and she must have thought, "Who is that guy?" Like being so familiar with me, and then I went up there and I said, "Hi, how are you doing now?" And she's still like, she's still like just being polite, I guess she was, And then she came up to the counter and she said to the other two that were behind the counter, she says, "Whatever happened to that girl that used to work here? I think she did martial arts or something. Scottish." I'm standing right next to her. I could have tapped her on the shoulder and I said, "You're really going to probably have to take a breath right now because it's me." And she looked at me and her mouth fell open. No. She'd been talking to me all that time and she didn't realize it was me. I have no idea what the accent, I have no idea. But that was probably the funniest encounter. I've never seen anybody really look like so shocked.
Yeah, I
Because it
can,
was
I can
funny because I was
imagine.
standing next to her when she was asking about me. I mean, that was the funny part.
I mean, how many people get to have those moments in life? It's like we're
Yeah,
really, if you think about it, we're really blessed.
yeah,
It's almost like living in a witness protection program, invasion of the body snatcher. You get to be
Or
and
living
create
true life.
who you want.
Yeah,
We're like
you
gods,
know,
you know?
there's certain things I would never have been noted for if I'd been a male, you know, and living in a male body back then, you know. It probably would have been harder to do all the things I'd done, you know, get into music journalism. And in the UK, I was known as the main writer on the bodybuilding scene for women's bodybuilding. I was the top female bodybuilding writer, I believe, at the time. At least I was in every single magazine in some capacity or other, you know. And but I mean, I wouldn't have been different if I'd just been another guy writing about female bodybuilding. I'd have been a schmo, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have been like recognized for that, you know. So I guess I stood out by being a female writing for that, you know. So like I said, that maybe half of my life I was supposed to live that way, you know, just to become who I am now. So I can't really. Certain things I am now, I would never have been if I'd transitioned at 28 when I started, you know. So yeah, I do think that like you were saying, there's a reason for the weight, maybe, you know.
I know that for Mark, taking testosterone and other kinds of things like winstrol and other androgenizing hormones and drugs and things, that had a thing to play with his transition even prior to transitioning. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are. I know what happened with we know what happened with women's bodybuilding from the use of these substances, that it actually hurt the sport for a while. They lost representation. What are your thoughts with regards to this and how it affected your transitioning as a female bodybuilder at the time?
Well, I'll start with the female bodybuilders and their drug use, and then I'll morph into the other part. I think it was around 2009 or something. I wrote an article called "The Androgynous Zone," and that was about female bodybuilders. And the way I began it was, I put down a dosage of testosterone. And I said, imagine taking like such and such. I think it was like the standard half a mil transition dose of testosterone. And then, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to remember the article here. Either way, I was outlining a pattern of drug use. Oh no, it was a female bodybuilder. Sorry about that. It was a female bodybuilder's drug use I was outlining. And then I said, do you realize that you're taking all this? And we're talking about like two milliliters of testosterone, tons of other things, and yet for a female who wants to transition into becoming a male, she takes half a cc of testosterone, full stop, and that is enough for a female to begin the hormonal transition to being a male. That's all it takes. So, so I'm thinking, what are we doing in bodybuilding when the women are now taking like 3, 4, 5 times that amount? What do they not think that they're technically undergoing a transition? And then I kind of looked at it like, what happens to the female bodybuilder who's no longer in the sport, and whatever she has is like, how are you going to explain that to Joe Public? If you're going out with friends or something, you're going to look so different from everybody. I often wondered what would the psychological thing be, but I guess a lot of people, the female bodybuilders, they never leave bodybuilding, so they never have to face that. But it would be an interesting thing where you think to yourself, if that's just a part of your life, what if you want to leave that behind and then go back? It's almost like detransitioning in a way, because they've transitioned into a male, because they're losing their hair, their jaw is squared, they've got facial hair growth, their voices are deeper. I mean, you've got to think to yourself, that was all totally acceptable when you're mixing with people who are all like that too. That what if you leave that sport and then you're back into the normal flow of society, or even just in the workplace, it's just, and then for me, the testosterone was it didn't really change me any mentally. I would say it leveled me out. I became less aggressive on testosterone. I became less feisty on testosterone. It didn't make me any more like alpha, put it like that. But obviously, it gave me. Once again, I'll give you a story where we were at a contest once, and this girl was next to us, and I was talking about testosterone, and I was saying, well, it didn't, because we were talking about the drugs in the sport in general, and I goes, well, it didn't do anything for me. And she turned to me and did the hands and the hips and the head swivel. I went, Lee, what are you talking about? You got a beard. But that was preceded by effing. But you know what I mean? But you've got an effing beard. You know what I mean? I'm sitting there saying it never did anything for me. You know, but that was all it really did, you know. But then again, I mean, it does give you then the confidence because you're now looking more, you know.
Exactly.
But I stopped taking testosterone about 4 years ago now. I think it was 4 or 5 years maybe. I stopped taking it because for me it was all about stopping your periods. When I got my chest surgery, which was 2013, I think, I was still having a period, so I was still stopping it with testosterone. And for the surgery, I had to stop the testosterone for the blood clotting factors. The doctor wanted me to stop taking everything. He did that. He is a gynecomastia surgeon to all the main top bodybuilders, and it was his thing: no drugs of any kind before surgery. And so I had to stop. And it was within a few weeks, my period came back. I thought it was a UTI because I cancelled my first chest surgery and postponed it because I thought, I think I've got a UTI or something. And to my horror, they'd come back after all these years just because I'd stopped taking testosterone for less than a month. You know, it was unbelievable. So, you know, so when it was rescheduled, I was not going to stop taking testosterone, you know, so I just kept taking it for my second surgery. But that's how repulsive it was. But I now I don't need to take them because I'm 60 years old. I just turned 60. So, you know, I don't need testosterone to stop the period for the last 10 years, you know. Well, maybe not 10, maybe 5, maybe 7 years, I think. I've been able to get away with not taking anything because that's over for me.
Right. I've been, since 1998 when I bodybuilded, I was taking all sorts of stuff. And then I've been on testosterone since 2003 when I officially transitioned. And I'm still on it. I had a hysterectomy, full hysterectomy, and top surgery at the same time. But I find whenever I try to stop taking testosterone, I don't do well. My body just I get so emaciated and so sickly.
Yeah.
It's like, I
know sometimes they can't stop taking it because they'll start getting hips and things like that. But that was the one blessing for me of anorexia. If there's, like you say, there's a reason for everything. Anorexia for me just stopped me developing a female body in every way. You know, I mean, I never developed hips or anything, you know, so I never had a female shape because I stopped it before it started. It didn't even start, you know. Maybe I stunted a few inches off my growth as well. So I've got to take that as part of it. But I think that was a blessing for me. So when I stopped taking testosterone, that's the thing I like to point out, incidentally, to female bodybuilders when they're using anabolic steroids, because anabolic steroids are just forms of testosterone. So it's all the same thing. It's going to do the same to your body. So I always tell them, when you stop taking them, because some people are under the misconception that once they stop taking them, everything's just going to go back to normal, you know? And I'm like, no. You know, if you got facial hair on steroids, you're going to have facial hair off steroids. If you're losing your hair on steroids, the process is probably set in motion and it's going to continue, you know? So they don't get that. They think that once they stop taking steroids, that they're going to stop facial hair, their voice is going to, you know, no, there is no going back to the pre-steroid, pre-testosterone self. You know, I mean, and in fact, the male hormone, I have great respect for female trans women because, trans women, female, stupid thing to say. I've got the greatest respect for trans women, should be what I said, because it's far harder to mask the symptoms, I'll say, of masculinity than it is for me anyway, I think, than it is for a male to transition into a female. Because you've got so many male characteristics to stomp out, and it's not easy. I mean, I can't even imagine that process, you know? It's so much harder, you know? To me anyway, I believe
it is absolutely harder, and that's why the controversial issue of puberty blocking and all that is so like critical in the life of a true transsexual,
Yeah.
young person who doesn't
Yeah.
want to have these effects, the
Yeah.
deeper voice or the bigger body or the taller, frame or, lack of development in a
Yeah.
certain area. I mean, or too much development in another area, which would even create greater dysphoria for them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but the real tragedy is when the wrong people take puberty blockers and then they regret that they transitioned or that
Mhm.
they went as far as to have a phalloplasty even. I
Yeah.
mean, and then they regret it and then they kind of like want to paint the picture of like it's wrong for everyone to transition because no one's really trans, and then it gets into this controversial soup of things that people are now, you know, okay, well, no one's really trans. These
Yeah.
people are all mentally having a problem. They're mentally disabled. They have a, some kind of issue that is obviously something that you know
Yeah, because they're kind of put one size fits all. The few people who it hasn't worked for, they want to like incorporate everybody, and
Yeah.
that's dangerous. What we're seeing right now unfold. It's
Yeah.
really
Well,
it's
that takes us back to in the early days of, people being accepted or in inverted commas and as transgender, is that you had to undergo a psychiatric evaluation before you would
yeah.
even be given hormones. Now, a lot of people were against that because I know my body and everything like this, and I know my mind and I'm this or that. But yeah, there are some people that do, but not everyone. So
Exactly.
maybe it's, I think maybe in some cases, I mean, once again, some people will disagree violently with what I'm about to say, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that you have a full psychiatric assessment before you're given hormones
Oh,
to
yeah.
know
For sure.
exactly where. And it's not guaranteed it's going to be right. I mean, of course, I mean there are certain periods in your life where you would be assessed as one thing and not, but I still think it's valid because it also cuts out the people that are just doing it because it sounds like a fun thing to do on a Sunday if they're bored. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mhm.
it's like,
Exactly.
let's see what it's like to live as a man, or let's see what it's like to live as a woman. And oh yeah, I'll take a few hormones. It's fine because once I decide to go back, it'll all correct itself. No, it won't.
Yeah.
Right.
We've already established that it won't. There is no
when you
going back.
sign that
Yeah,
contract, it's for life. You
yeah.
can't ever go back. You're never the same person
No.
ever.
I can't imagine how that must feel. I believe you've spoken to some people like that on your
Yeah,
show.
I detransitioned for a little while
You
myself.
did?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it was because of, just these expectations. I mean, I came from a family that was Christian, and I had a family that I no longer am in communication with, children, and so he felt that pressure, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? How am I going to be acceptable to these kids in the future? Can I, what's my role? I mean, so it was a real like,
So I've walked that walk
yeah,
before, and it's very. I mean, it was transition was a breeze. Detransitioning was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like trying to go back to something that was never right in the first place.
yeah,
And it's
exactly.
yeah. So I could speak on that, dramatically. So, you know, after a while, I was like, forget this. I'm going to get back to who I am, which is this right here. I mean,
Yeah,
I could do this with my eyes closed.
right.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
The other is the game.
yeah. The other is the imposter. The other is like trying to put on this act, and it's
yeah.
very debilitating. Like I said, I
Well,
can't come off of hormones. I can't. My body doesn't know how to function without testosterone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there are people as well that I'm not going to name names because then I would be controversial, but maybe we'll both know who I'm talking about. There are people who seem to think that they can live half of their life as like for example male and the other half of their life as female, and they can switch back and forth between male and female, and yet they call themselves transgender. Who can we be talking about? I don't know. But there are people that do that, and then they get all this like attention foisted upon them, and I'm thinking, but this is not how I, once again, I will get on a soapbox for trans people at this point, because this is not how I want people to think trans people are. I don't want people to think that, oh yeah, if I'm going to the gym, I'm going to be the guy, you know what I mean, working out in the gym, and I'm going to show you all my workout pictures, you know what I mean, with no makeup on and everything. But then I'm going to get all dressed up to go out at night, you know what I mean, with my wig on and everything. And I'm like, and now we're seeing like we're doing whole media things and we're calling ourselves transgender. That's not what I am. I don't want people to think that, that I put on fishnet stockings and go out on the town on a Friday night and then do the rest of the week like this. To me, I got really irritated about that particular thing, because I thought this is not the way. And a lot of people there was a lot of media attention on it, and a lot of people were focusing on it, and people were talking about it that I knew, and I'm thinking, this is not my experience. You know what I mean? This is not who. And then there was the one person I can mention, because everybody mentions her, is Caitlyn Jenner. I'm sorry, I just do not think Caitlyn Jenner is authentic. It doesn't sound to me like a typical trans story. And I don't know, maybe I'm way off right now, but when as Bruce, he's when he was talking as Bruce, so I'll say he said when he used to give motivational speeches, he would have women's underwear on because it made him feel more comfortable. Now, I don't know, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't sound like a trans person's experience to me. I could be wrong, but I just don't think I didn't wear men's briefs because I felt more comfortable in them. I don't know.
It's something
controversial.
It's something much deeper than most people care to understand. It's not about clothing.
Yeah.
Clothing has nothing to do with that. It's way deeper spiritually wise, an essence of who you are, that clothing ain't gonna do it. Clothing ain't gonna do it. Mannerisms ain't gonna do it. Things that you're putting on. It's like some people put on an act.
Yeah.
And that's not it. You either are or you're not.
Yeah. You can't have it both ways. Well, I mean, you can, but just don't call yourself transgender and have it both ways. You know what I mean? Because then you that means everybody thinks that that's what a transgender person is, because that's who we're seeing on the television as being a transgender person. And that's not most people I know that are trans have a very similar story to myself, when they knew from a very early age that something wasn't right. But they were that, like myself, I was born in 1962. So my generation was I was a tomboy. That's how we classified it, Oh, you'll grow out of it, you're, a tomboy. But if I was me growing up today, my parents would definitely question, what was going on, because there was never anything feminine about me. I mean, even when my mother used to make me wear dresses, I must have looked terrible. I don't know what kind of male I looked like, but my mother would make me wear these awful summer dresses, with the puffy sleeves and everything. Actually, she used to say I looked like Alfred Hitchcock in a dress because of the way I would stand, because I was so disgruntled at wearing it. I would stick my stomach out. And I would wear these, I think they were crimpling, they were shorts underneath. And the minute I left my house, I would tuck the dress into the shorts and go out pretending it was like shorts and a t-shirt. And I'd go and play with the guys up the street, play football, and I would say, call me Steve. Like, so your mom won't know. I mean, like, the mother didn't know I was Karen from down the street. I was like, no, don't. Just call me Steve. Say I'm your friend, Steve. Because, I mean, there was nothing about me that was, like I said, I had no female toys. And my mother used to actually say, give her a doll and she won't know what to do with it. Give her a gun and she'll be happy for hours. Not sure that's sending the right message these days, but you know what I'm saying. I was just never comfortable with girls' toys.
You either know or you don't know. And then I know that the gender critical try to put everyone in a box, and they try to say, well, you're a woman no matter what you play with or what you don't play with or what you wear. And yes, we know our biology. We couldn't be transsexual unless we were born
Yeah.
the opposite sex that we transition to. I have no problem admitting my biology, but I'm trans. I'm a transsexual man. And I've tried the other. I detransitioned, just didn't work. So I think what we need to do is figure out better screening, like you said, better
Yeah.
therapy sessions so that people don't make that mistake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these
I
are
mean,
people that are literally like really getting into this for the wrong reason, and then
100%.
they they feel like they're having to play some role in being, you know, a female in and not really embracing who they are as a person, and then they live with this angst of performance, and then certain times it gets to be too much work, so then they stop, and then they
Yeah.
say, well, that's everybody's case, you know,
Yeah.
everybody's playing a game, and it's like, I'm not playing a game.
Mm.
You're not playing it. You're not playing a game. We're not here to play games. We're
No.
here to be authentic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, yeah, like I said, like we were saying before, I think that, you know, like a proper assessment. When I was assessed, it was weird because he wasn't even really asking direct questions either. And I was just talking away and he was asking this question, that question. And then the end of it, he said, well, there's no doubt in my mind that you're you know, you have gender dysphoria. You know, and I'm like, really? Because I really didn't even think I was being convincing. You know, I was just being me and answering the questions. And he was like, I'm like, oh my God, so I am. You know, I don't know, did I go in there hoping for, oh no, you're fine. You know what I mean? But it was still a shock to me when he said that. You know, because to me, I wasn't even being questioned in a way that would, you know, I don't know what kind of weird psychological tricks he was playing on me to try and. I guess it was not the standard questions that you could fake answers to, you know. But yeah, but also it also kind of, when I went in there the first time I went in there, I tended to, it was all male to female trans people that were in there, and they were all sitting there waiting to go in, and I sat down. Uh, and I was kind of like, oh God, I just felt like really standing out, you know. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I remember at the time I said, oh, I'm here to interview the doctor for a magazine. Because I was so self-conscious. I didn't want them to think. I mean, God forbid I might be transgender. You know what I mean? I was like, oh no, I'm here to interview him for a. Oh yeah, you're transgender. Okay. You know what I mean? Because I mean, to this day, I have a problem going into a doctor's office and telling them there's something wrong with me. You know? No, I'm fine. So why are you here? You know. But yeah, so yeah, but I do think the evaluation it would be a really good thing, because also a lot of the people that are doing it are rich. You know, they have the money. They're wealthy. Their parents are wealthy, and so they're getting all these surgeries because they're feeling a certain way when they're 13, 14. I mean, I do not. I'm not really an advocate of surgery right away. I mean, at least wait till I don't know. It's like immaturity is different for everybody, but I mean, bottom, like lowest age 16. I mean, that's even being a bit, you know, adventurous. But it's just that because you really don't. I mean, you know who you are. Yes, we knew who we were, you know, but not everybody is. You know, the media now is so influential. I mean, I didn't have Facebook or Instagram or any of these things to influence me when I was growing up. You know, now it's like there's too much talk of it, and that makes people curious. You know, and you know, then that's not necessarily a good thing, but you know.
Yeah, read what
Lyra says some are female impersonators and going under the trans umbrella now, but before 2000, they were openly impersonating just for fun.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There are like a few drag queens that are now calling. I made a video with one of them, you know, that are now calling themselves trans, and I don't know if they're really trans. Sorry, that's my bird. I don't know, you know, they're calling themselves trans now, you know, and that they were a drag queen, like a couple of years ago. So I don't know their story, I don't know.
Mhm.
Is being a drag queen like a stepping stone to being trans? I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so,
Right.
So I wouldn't have
No, I
thought all
mean, it's
that
always
flamboyance was
been,
necessary.
yeah, it's always been about, being campy and poking fun at
Yeah,
femininity. Actually, it was
Mhm.
kind of like mocking women in a way,
Yeah.
yeah,
in the gay community. So it was a totally different thing, but, you know, it's
Yeah. Nowadays, it's just, people just, I don't know.
trying to turn into the catch-all
Yeah.
for every condition. People are like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not OCD, I'm trans,
yeah.
and
Well, once again, it's become somewhat trendy.
right.
Yeah.
And although I think that's dying down a bit now, but it's still a big major news story when the son or daughter of some celebrity is coming out as trans, because then all of a sudden they get to portray themselves as being the understanding parents, and everybody's putting accolades on them, and all of a sudden their dead career is revived because their child is transgender.
Right.
There's a lot of like using it, as a tool to get, the spotlight back again.
No.
But it's it was different with. I mean, Chaz Bono is that I was 100% transgender. I have no
Hmm.
question in my mind about his story,
Yeah.
and his upbringing. Because Cher wasn't even that fond of the idea to begin with. She
No.
wasn't
No,
even playing the happy trans parent,
not
She
even.
fought against it, I believe.
I think
Yeah.
So that story's true. But like I said, there's something about Caitlyn Jenner that I don't find authentic.
Yeah.
I just can't put my finger on it, but
yeah, well, I think, Bruce at the time before loved the limelight.
yeah,
Caitlyn loved the limelight. Caitlyn didn't have to, have a TV show and be on the cover of Vogue just because, they were like just innocently just wanting to portray themselves. They wanted to remain relevant.
Hmm.
The
yeah,
Kardashians was a show,
Yeah.
yeah.
and Caitlyn was, Bruce at the time was kind of like being, kind of like left off in the side of
It
that
was always
show,
fumbling around in the background
fumbling,
complaining about
stumbling.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, how do I make myself relevant? You know?
Yeah, and then he thought, I'm a cross-dresser, so let me see.
Yeah,
How
well,
far can I push this to get
there's
above
lots
these
of cross
Kardashians,
dressers. There's lots of cross dressers, and that's a thing.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't true.
Right.
yeah,
But there are
yeah.
transsexual women as
Yeah.
And
well.
there was, I mean, that whole TV show came in for a lot of stick. The one that he did because, or she did, should I say, because it was like she came from a position of such privilege, and
Oh
here
yeah.
she is on a TV show portraying her life as a trans person going around with all her trans friends and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
She honestly in that television series, I can't remember what it was called now, but on that TV show, she almost was like a reporter. To
I
me, she
am
was like a
too.
reporter
Hmm.
documenting the lives of trans women, not a trans
Exactly.
woman living with other trans women. She
Yeah.
was almost
Yeah.
like interrogating them and reporting on them and asking them about that. It honestly seemed like a David Attenborough program from when he
Mhm.
used to do the wildlife programs,
Wildlife.
studying them like they were wildlife or something.
This is a trans
Oh,
person
so
in their
this is what I
natural
have to
habitat.
do. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
not like you don't learn to be trans. You know what I mean? It's like we were saying before, you fall into being who you were all along. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be
That's
something
it.
that you have to take notes on. Oh, I have to sit like this. Oh, I have to wear this. Or,
Right.
oh, tell me I can't fly my model airplanes and play with my
Yeah.
motorbikes anymore? You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Because
It's
she still has very masculine hobbies.
yeah.
And you know
Exactly.
what I mean? And once again, not everybody's the same, but like I was referring to myself, I didn't have a single female hobby
Yeah.
or toy when I was growing up or anything like that. Whereas she has a whole collection of, like, I don't know, some kind of those plane things and drones,
Well,
and
planes
likes
or
to do dirt biking and all this kind of thing. It's
cars.
very masculine pursuits.
Yeah.
But like,
Definitely.
but then again, I mean, but that would be acceptable if she dressed herself like, like a butch lesbian, shall we say? But she goes on the cover of Vogue, It's and it's hard to find the whole thing congruous.
Yeah, it totally is. So, where can people find? I have the links that you gave me down
Yeah,
below on your Misfit um, autobiography. Is that something you're going to be putting out on paperback or
I'm not
ebook?
sure at the moment. I did a TV show. I recorded for a TV show. Didn't, it's not out yet. A couple of years ago, and it was supposed to go on a streaming platform. So I still don't know what's happening with it. But it was about an interview I did with a bodybuilder called Sally McNeil, who went to jail for killing her husband, and she was like brutally attacked by him 400 times during their marriage. And she was let out of jail because of the COVID thing. Otherwise, she'd probably still be in jail. But I did the only prison interview that they had, and they were doing a show with they were interviewing everybody that was involved with it. And of course, my article was at the forefront of it. So this is connected, by the way. So my thought was, when this comes out, I'm going to be ready with the book to promote. So
Right.
with that in mind, I started writing the book because I thought I don't want to be waiting and then, when I get this little bit of attention to miss the boat, I'm going to have it ready. So I don't know if it's ever going to air this thing, but as a result, I've started writing it. So I'm like probably I'm up to age 38 on it now.
Okay.
So I've serialized bits of it at the moment on Facebook under the title Misfit, an autobiography. And I was thinking, if worst comes to worst, I'll put it out on Kindle
Yeah.
because
Oh,
I
you
see a
can.
lot of people doing that now,
Mhm.
and it's interesting because I had a reading by a psychic, which I don't do on a regular basis. It's actually the first time I've ever had one a couple of weeks ago, and she said to me, because I said to her I was writing the book, and she said, your book isn't going to sell many copies. She said, but she said the film rights will make you a lot of money.
Hmm.
And the weird thing is, a guy that I let see it a while back, who used to be in the movie industry, he used to put together the funds for various movies. The first thing he said when he read it was, "This would make a great movie."
Hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a movie. I don't know,
Hmm.
but it has to be
Yeah.
written first.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So
But
yeah,
you
like I said, at the moment, if nothing else comes up, it will probably be Kindle. I
can.
would hope by at least the next spring.
Okay.
I did hopefully want to have it out by November, but here we are in October. It's not
Yeah.
happening. So I'd put next spring as a deadline for it.
So, Lee, holistically speaking, if someone were to ask you, was it worth transitioning, and has it been what you thought it would be, and would you do it again? That kind of thing.
Oh, 100%. It's been like often wonder. I wish I'd done it years ago. You know what I mean? I wish I'd continued at 28. But then, like we were saying before, maybe my life would not have taken me here if I had done that because the opportunities wouldn't have been there to sustain me here. I needed to be female to do the things I had to do before I could become male, if that
There
makes
you go.
sense.
Yeah.
So, but having said that, absolutely now it just feels like it's my second act. And now I've been understudy for, and now I get to play my real role. So yeah, I never look back. I just feel so much comfortable just doing everyday daily things now, you know, just going out in the morning, just being like, actually just helping out at the store I said I worked at when I was female. It's much easier to me working there now as male. I just interact with people differently.
Yeah.
Just I just feel like more confident in myself, as who I am now. I am. Yeah, no, it's never been anything I'd maybe like to get my hair back, but
Join the
Yeah,
club.
join the club. I just shave it off because it's like I don't like that Caesar look. So I'm just, you
that
know,
was the reason I stopped taking testosterone was pure vanity.
yeah.
I'm gonna hold on to what I've got left. And if I can get away with the rest, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, but no, absolutely no regrets. No regrets.
That's really good to hear because there's so many stories out there these days that have lots of regret in them. And
Yeah.
I think it's really sad in a way because those fences were let down so easily in the last 10 years that it's allowed people that would create regret for themselves to come into this space. And,
Yeah.
if those gates had been left up a little higher, psychiatric evaluation, other comorbid issues may be looked at and studied before and actually, trying to help people ascertain what they're dealing with. Maybe there wouldn't be so many people that are regretful these days, because back
It
in
would
the
be
day,
interesting if they
yeah,
found out there was something in the brain chemistry. It's been alluded to before, a certain,
Yeah.
you know, I hate to say the word imbalance, but just a certain thing that's different. And I for my it was Katie Couric actually. Where did you ever see the documentary she did on was it the History Channel, the Discovery Channel, or one of those obscure channels? She did I think it was a two-part documentary on transgender, and she was talking to doctors and and people like that and saying like and they were showing pictures of the brain of a transgender person and the brain of just a regular CIS person, and there was anomalies there.
Yeah.
Rather there were slight anomalies there, but they were wondering, is this the reason? Is it something that chemically that goes on? And it made me think, because I remember my mother telling me that when she was pregnant, my father wanted a son. It was I want a son, I want a son. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it was kind of like drummed into her almost, I think, in her psyche that I have to produce a boy. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And there was a huge pressure on her to do that. And I wonder if that kind of melted down into into her. I don't know how you would describe it, but was that sort of communicated to the fetus at some point via her,
Yeah.
you
The
know,
development.
state, and
Yeah.
everything that she knew was expected of her. And then even like when I was the girl, my father raised me more like a son because I was helping him. He was like the handyman around the place. I would help him with his projects and stuff like that. It was never thought odd that he was showing his daughter, like, you know, having his daughter drill nails into things or holding things while he put nails into things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if it happened in the womb.
I definitely think there's some sort of neurological development that takes its place when we're being developed in our mother's womb. And we're very connected to our mothers when we're
Hmm.
in there and
Yeah.
her thought process and even voices and things, your dad was probably, and how's my son doing in there and
Yeah.
wanting a boy and stuff like that, that it can actually play a major role in the development in our brain. I mean, I am sure that they're going to find out that there is something biologically
Yeah.
different in us
There has
than
to
the average.
be,
Yeah.
because this really isn't a choice. It's
No.
like it's no more a choice than somebody who's gay chooses to be gay. I
Exactly.
mean, who would choose to
Exactly.
be, like that live a life that was so, like
Difficult. Yeah.
hard, for want of a
Yeah.
better word. You know what I mean? Like to have to
Yeah.
overcome so many things,
Yeah.
just to be accepted. You would never,
Exactly.
and also, like I said, people don't understand how like, you don't have a female thought, you don't have a male thought. You know what I mean? It's like it really isn't. There's no identification with the gender we were born in, and
Exactly.
people don't understand how strong that is. And it really is. It's the thing. It doesn't even occur to me most of the time that I'm not, because unless you've known me in my journey and you're a friend of mine, or you know me through my writing or whatever. Like the people in my building, for example, have no idea. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
just another guy that lives in the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
of the people in my gym now, they don't know because I'm in a different gym. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody in my gym knows.
Yeah.
I know, but none of the guys that are in the nobody knows, because and it's not something that you need to know.
Exactly.
But and nobody guesses or anything, I mean, what's the guess?
Yeah.
I think like
So
as humans, we all, every single one of us, whether you're cis, trans or whatever, you're going to experience a certain amount of androgenization, masculinization, and feminization throughout
Yeah.
your life. You know, women go through a time during, menopause after that where they start to masculinize,
Yes. Yeah.
and men go through like when their testosterone starts to teeter off some, they actually start to feminize and develop, feminine things, So it is like, is it really that important, for society to put such a shining spotlight on sex and gender as we know it? I mean, because it really does, kind of like interweave during
Yeah.
our lifetime as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's just society's need to put us all in little boxes,
Exactly.
Yeah.
People love to put
Exactly.
labels on, and if you don't fit in there, they get all upset,
Yeah. Or they
So that's
politicize
it.
it.
Yeah,
They
that's it.
they
That's the only
politicize
thing.
it. They fight. You know, you got
Because
the
it's easy to criticize. Human
yeah.
beings were born to criticize.
Yeah.
It's our
Exactly
mission
right.
in life to criticize. How
Yeah.
easy is it to criticize? It's so much easier to
Mhm.
criticize than to sit down with somebody and try and understand,
Exactly.
It's so much
Exactly.
easier to dismiss and criticize them than it is to actually try and understand what they're saying.
Exactly.
And I
So,
think that's what's happening though in this like new age that we're going into is that like you even notice that like when he's sitting in the sauna at the gym and stuff and these younger guys are talking, they're all in touch with their feelings when they're talking about, you know, all this stuff like, oh, I didn't know you went through that. Oh, I'm so sorry. And it's stuff that men wouldn't have had banter about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
you
What
know,
happened to did you see those Yankees last night?
I know. I'm sitting there. These two young guys. They're talking away. I'm thinking, am I in the right sauna? Are these men? Because they sound like women expressing, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh gosh, okay, what's happening to the burly dudes? I mean, that's disappearing,
Yeah,
literally. I
yeah,
mean, so, but it's probably a good thing. We're evolving as a species.
we're
yeah,
learning to
Something's
be more
happening.
empathetic.
Yeah,
We're learning to
something's
be
happening.
passionate for each
Yeah,
other, to care for each other.
yeah,
yeah.
Something
Yeah,
that's
I
been
think I
lost.
think maybe men are becoming more in tune with their feminine side, and women are
yeah.
getting more in tune with their masculine side. I mean, a
And
lot of
there we go.
families now, the woman is the breadwinner, and the
Yeah,
man stays home and looks after the kids.
yeah,
And
definitely.
it used to be like, whoa, that's weird. Now it's kind of like accepted.
Yeah.
If the woman is
Mm-hmm.
is taking in more money than the man, then why should the woman give up her jobs and the
Mm-hmm.
man go to work? I mean, I think there's much more balance now,
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
because
Yeah,
people
that
are not
movie,
judging.
yeah.
that Michael Keaton movie that came out in the 80s was called Mr. Mom.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And that was like so like, oh my gosh, can't imagine. He gets
yeah,
fired from his job at the motor
yeah,
plant or something, and then he starts becoming, a take care of the children person.
yeah.
It's like, yeah.
So I
Yeah,
guess we are evolving then.
yeah, we
Something's
are. We
changing.
There's hope
definitely
for the
are.
human race, maybe.
There
Yeah,
is. There's
there
hope.
is. I think so. And I think, people are going to go kicking and screaming, but they'll eventually die out, as dinosaurs always do.
Yeah,
But, I'm hopeful for the future that the new generation will teach the old generation a new way and people won't be so judging, fighting, and fearing everything. And,
yeah,
it'll all be good. You
yeah.
know. So thank you so much, Lee, for your time. I know it's late where you're at. You're 3 hours ahead of us. I
Yeah,
appreciate.
I'm looking. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
11:47 where
Oh
I
my
am.
there
gosh.
you go. Yeah, it's kind of late for you, but thank you so much for the
Yeah.
interview. And I know it started a little wacky with the audio thing, but it turned out to be a great interview. Thank you so much for sharing, for letting
Yeah,
people
thank
know
you.
that there are happy trans people out in the world. Not
Yes,
all of us are
exactly.
miserable.
Great.
Yeah, happy trans. All right, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you
all right.
again. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned next week. Again, another interview next Sunday. Catch all the different interviews that are lined up on the channel. Appreciate you guys. We love you. But remember to always love yourself too. Have a good night. Take care. Bye bye.